Today, folks, I want to walk you through the average Canadian statistics when it comes to the average median income across this entire country to see where you fit with the current income you're making. We'll talk about auto debt, the average car loans people are taking, mortgage debt, what are people taking out on their homes across each province. We'll talk about personal consumer debt and so much more in between. So if that's a conversation you'd appreciate, hit that like button because I'm going to offer personal insights into my own personal finances at hopes that it helps and offers, further clarity. So let's get into this by first and foremost talking about the average wage. And I'm presuming this is like household income because typically that's how the Canadian government works. It's how much a household brings in. But we can see the median after-tax income across this entire great nation. And I truly believe Canada wants you to be rich, and it's one of the greatest places on the entire planet, considering we're one of the most commodity richest places. We have the best tax advantaged accounts. We have free healthcare. Damn it, I do love Canada. There's obviously some complaints, some things that need fixing, but I love it here. And we can see that most people are making $66,800, which is very good, actually. I mean, that works out to being $1,400, I believe, a week of income. And taking a look at by province, I always find it really interesting that Alberta here, being one of the more affordable places to live, also has one of the highest median incomes at $77,700, where British Columbia, where Vancouver is home to, along with Ontario, where Toronto is home to, are some of the most expensive places to live. And actually the median income is lower than that of Alberta. Just some intriguing statistics here. And it'd be also nice to know, or you don't have to comment in the comment section below, but where do you sit on this spectrum? Because I know I am well above this median income for the last couple years, but I think most people as a household should be able to smash this. I mean, even if you're making $40,000 a year, two of you have full-time jobs, you get a side hustle income. I think you should aspire to make more income than this if you're married or have a household, or even if you're single. I mean, this should be pretty achievable in the current market environment. It's nice to know too, in a pandemic, heading into the pandemic and even into 2023, the average median wages are still going up. So even heading into this recessionary environment with all these layoffs we're hearing about, the jobs market here is still very, very strong. And we talked about this in my last video as well. But let's talk about the thing that teases me off the most before we get into mortgages and real estate and all the stuff people love. Most people, before they get into homes, they get into cars. And this just really drives me bonkers. I have never bought a new car in my entire life, and every car I've ever owned never cost me more than 10 grand. And I've heard every excuse under the sun for buying a used car. Oh, it's not going to be reliable. It just, the crazy amount of excuses lead you, crazy people, to be spending $400 to $800 a month on average. The average Canadian pays $400 to $800 a month in their car payment. You know how insane that is? My average car payment, and I don't have a car payment, but the cost of my car, insurance, gas, the whole 9 yards with repairs is like 250 Canadian dollars a month. That's what it's been working out to for the last 2 years. So don't give me this bull crap that you can't buy a nice used car and you don't need to buy it from a dealership. I've never bought a single car from a dealership. Forget the warranties, forget all that crap. My last car cost me $7,500. I've been driving it for 3 years and it's been a great car. I'm not complaining by any metric because I just think it's nuts paying 7.21% on the average interest rate for a new car here. Like, oh my God, you guys are nuts. I think Dave Ramsey says it best, and I know I'm a stickler about this, but unless you're a millionaire, you shouldn't be buying a new car because this detriments everything you're doing in your life, as this is a depreciating asset. It takes away from a down payment on a house. You're paying the dealership a crap ton of money in interest. And I always laugh when people are like, oh, well, you could lease or, finance or do whatever, because the fact is, if you put it in the market or somewhere where you can make a higher return, you're better off not dumping it into a car. And then all of a sudden, life isn't that damn perfect. And we head into this recession and interest rates explode. Now, all of a sudden, you're not making any money off your market investments, stocks, whatever you're buying. And on top of that, your interest has gone through the roof on your car payment. So everything about that thesis kind of fell apart in the current macro environment. So just buy a freaking used car, buy what you can afford. And unless you're a millionaire, if you're a millionaire, I mean, by all means, go buy yourself a new Tesla, buy something you like, treat yourself. You deserve it. You worked for it. But you noobs that have no savings, where your car costs more than your entire savings account and your retirement accounts, you're crazy. Sorry, sell your shit, get something better, get something used. Now let's talk about the mortgages here, folks. This is very intriguing stuff. Let me shrink my head out so you guys can see this fully. But we got the average mortgages in Alberta at the top of the list here being $339,000. $69,000. British Columbia, just under $500,000. Manitoba, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, these kind of other provinces that are lesser talked about, obviously a lot cheaper to live in. But Ontario, I think this is going up. I just can't foresee, British Columbia and Ontario, where the average cost of real estate is so damn high that the average mortgage is only $462,000. But then again, keep in mind, in Canada, I'm pretty sure the statistic is that over 30% of Canadians actually own their homes. So that'd be your boomers, probably people heading into retirement, whereas younger people, I think, would have much larger loans on their homes. So I think taking the median, probably not the best way to go about this, but even still, taking the average interest rate today between 5 and 6% on $400,000, the average person is paying over $20,000 just in interest. I mean, around just probably under $2,000 a month before obviously principal, taxes, insurance, all that jazz, utilities. I mean, housing costs are getting insane. Let's dive a little bit deeper into that, shall we? Taking a look at it by province, Ontario, guys, we're starting to see that housing correction happen that people don't think is happening, and it's weird because it depends on where you live. Toronto not seeing the largest correction, whereas Durham region, some of the outer skirt GTA areas have been seeing massive corrections, upwards of 20 to 30%. But the average price has gone from last year 1.08 million to about 865,000. Manitoba, mild correction there. Taking a look at Saskatchewan, where they actually saw a mild increase in real estate coming into February of 2023 over last year. Really interesting stats. What's so hot about Saskatchewan? It's a pretty barren place to see real estate rise. We're seeing Alberta see a little bit of a mild correction there by about $50,000. British Columbia also seeing going from 1.1 million to 940,000, and Quebec as well seeing a bit of a correction. So basically, look at that, Newfoundland's actually seeing an increase as well from 265 to 276. So maybe these markets were just undervalued. Kind of interesting that they're actually seeing gains in values. And I think it's really scary for people that already have mortgages or got one in the last couple of years that either took on variable rates or their mortgage term is coming due in the next couple of years. Those people are probably shaking a lot right now. So I feel bad for them. Newer buyers, you got cash, as I mentioned, real opportunity presenting itself for the first time in probably the last 5-7 years to buy a house. But moving on, just taking one more brief look at some of the housing stats here, guys, we can actually see if we scroll through this, the home price increases, right? And it currently turns out that British Columbia, Ontario, and Alberta have actually seen the largest increases in home costs, which is pretty good from a return standpoint. As Ontario in 2011, the average home price was $368,000, and again today we know it's about $800,000. So almost pretty much tripling in price, which is pretty impressive. British Columbia not seeing something as similar because it was already expensive, but it's still over doubled in value, right? And then you can kind of pause, take a look at some of the other stats there if you're interested as well. But finally, I want to talk about consumer debt. Now, consumer debt, again, is very hard to just spew across an average because I imagine it varies very dramatically from person to person. But here it's saying the average Canadian consumer debt at the individual level, it's about $21,183. These statistics are concerning as they showcase an 8.2% increase compared to 2021 and a 6.4% surge from the first 6 months of 2022. Now, I have made it such a forefronted thing in my mind to never have debt. I've gone so far out of my way because when I was 19, I took out a $23,000 loan, and that $23,000 loan crippled me until I was about 23, and I said, never again, never going to do that. Always paid cash for a car. If you don't have the cash, you only buy what you can afford. Uber it, rent it, you borrow one, do what you can until you can come up with a few grand to buy one. I did everything I could to put myself in the position I'm in right now, which again leads to that opportunity and that awareness that, hey, if I want to buy a house, I have the opportunity to do so. If I want to buy more stock, take advantage of this recessionary environment, I have that opportunity. I think having that position of power is more important than having a nice car or this crazy consumer debt. Like I said, it's giving up those luxuries in the short term to have that long term future financial outlook. So people just got to be a little cheaper, not going out as much. And, like Dave Ramsey says, sacrifice today so you live like no one else. So one day you can live like no one else. But we are seeing the average consumer debt come down because that's statistics only go for 2022. But we do have some data coming into January, and we can see on instead of an annual basis, if we just look at a month over month basis, it is starting to retract. I don't know. I'd love to know what your average consumer debt is. Do you have student loans? How are you managing those in this current inflationary environment? Another reason to have no debt, guys, because again, in these recessionary markets and inflation gets out of control, at least you're only worried about paying extra for your groceries and not worried about paying extra on your debt. I mean, could you imagine having an auto debt, a variable rate mortgage debt, some consumer debt on a line of credit, and then all of a sudden having this kind of environment hit where now you're paying more for food, you're paying more for gas, and all of a sudden your interest rates, you're paying double on a lot of your loans and your cars and your mortgage. I mean, people could devastate themselves if they're not diligent with debt. And I do believe, as Dave Ramsey says, the borrower is slave to the lender, and I ain't ever going to be a slave, but I'll pass that question off to you.